What's up, guys? I have the Pigeon Mk8 here. This is the latest, probably final evolutionary step of the Pigeon platform, at least as I've conceived it so far. It's still a tactical sidearm for nerf. It's a grip-fed semi-automatic flywheel pistol. It uses katana mags, pecker mags, katana mags, or talon mags. There is a talon version. There's a katana version. I was going to do a wild card, but they didn't play nice. The work that it took to make that happen wasn't worthwhile, so I opted to do two different versions. If you need talon mags, you'll use the talon one. That's just what you do anyway. So if you needed a katana one, if you're one of the few people left who are actually using katanas, then you'd use that. That's me. The talon one has some advantages. I mean, it takes talons, so, but it also has a different ergonomics a little bit. The katana one has superior ergonomics in terms of grip and feel because the mag is a lot smaller in the dimensions that benefit a grip-fed design. But, you know, there's still katana mags. If at least the jet-released ones can be unreliable at times. I've personally gone and replaced all of mine with the OFP reduced friction follower. That helped a ton, but still can have some issues. This is my personal recommendation. My full recommendation is the katana frame and these angled feed pecker mags. They're modified by Colin Wood and designed by Kotobu, who is sadly out of the hobby now. Is a shame. He did some really cool stuff. The reason I like these the best, they're low capacity, 8 or 9, but they have the built-in stopper plate, so you can't over-insert, which is nice. The katana one still uses the same trigger guard mag release, but the trigger guard has been increased in size. The trigger is bulkier and beefier, so it's stronger, feels better. It doesn't flex when you pull it. I'll just show the katana or the talon version real quick too. So the main difference here, we have a fixed trigger guard, which is reasonably comfortable, but the actual grip here isn't as comfortable. It couldn't be and still fit talon mags as it is. There are a couple of spots that print with like 1 or 2 walls, which is not as much as we want, but to get the closest to comfortable grip as possible, that's just what it took. So the way this one works is it has this large catch in the back, which is based off of the Falcon and Komodo. Both of those designs are excellent tactical sidearms. The Falcon is dual stage, talon fed. If you like a more sci-fi look and you want dual stage and a steeper feed angle as well. My grips are 9 degrees, his are 15. So that's a lot steeper. That can be more comfortable. It depends on kind of how you feel, the shape of your hand and stuff. So anyway, this works by pressing this back and then it will just drop the mag. You can see it here. It does have one unfortunate thing, which is that because of the design of talon mags, which you can see the top catch is rounded because of the detent system in the talon magwell, you can still actually just yank these out. So I guess if you were in close combat or CQB against someone with one of these, you could yank out their mag and then beat them over the head with it. I guess that might work. So the general platform has been improved aesthetically. I went in and did a bunch of design work. Actually, I did that on the version 7. The video that I made was the version 6, which was functionally the same as V7, but did not offer... It looked more real steel, kind of because it was kind of plain. It was sort of boring, in my opinion. So I went and redid the aesthetics as much as I could. I tried to make them a little more sci-fi, a little more toy-like, because of the general form of, you know, what this does is essentially a nerf version of what a real pistol would do for, say, like a soldier or someone. You keep it in a holster, you draw it quick, you fire. Form follows function. And because the function is essentially the same in a really basic way, small, holdable, like the holstering is important because you're not, the whole design here, you're not supposed to use this most of the time. You're supposed to have it most of the time in case you need it. That pairs great with a Caliburn or a Spring Thunder because those lack rate of fire. And, you know, in the case of the Spring Thunder, it lacks range. So you might need something to compensate the rate of fire. This works really well for that. I've run it with my Caliburn a few times. It's great, actually. Just even situationally, it might be the better weapon to use. There are times where I've drawn it out because I expect a rush on a point, or I'm going to rush people, and I want to fire more shots, and then switch to Caliburn to hit from range. It does have some other improvements. We have a tack rail now. This is the battery tray. I'll get to that later. It's the same width as before. That couldn't really change because of the size of the wheels. They're just a set width. There's nothing we can do about that. I really wouldn't want to increase the crush on this either because it's already hard enough on darts. So the width's the same. It's a little bit shorter in height and length, although with the rail on it doesn't look any shorter, but if we take that off, it's a little narrower. So there's also a flush battery cover, so you don't have to use it with the tactical rail. I like that because it gives it more color and kind of a little more chunk, but there is a way to do this as well. This worked. It worked pretty well. Like this is, I thought about selling this particular one, but it's been through like a dozen wars and it's never let me down ever. So I wanted to keep it on hand as like a very reliable backup, but it's slowly being phased out of service. This one is superior though in terms of I don't even have words for what it's better at because I haven't gotten into it yet. So it's got two main features. I will get into that. It's got two main features. Oh, just little things. Slide lock. The slide lock is way further back. What this allows for is that we can actually top it off. So you can scavenge darts if that's a little more your playstyle or you're in a situation where you need to. That's handy. It has, I did this for the old Pigeon, but this one by default has slots in it for fiber optics. Not, the old sights could take fiber optics. This is just fun, by the way. This doesn't actually offer any real function. I just like it. Style points, I guess. It's got the cutouts so that the fiber optics will take in more light, which if you don't have that, they won't, and then they won't glow. It's, just little things. This is the Blowback engagement, which I'll get to. The sights are a lot bigger and chunkier. They're nice and easy to sight with. Got a nice simple picture. I don't really like making super complex sight pictures. And I guess finally, last thing on the exterior features is the slide lock is now not connected into the frame like this. It was screwed into the frame. That was a bad idea, actually. This is on a pin that goes through it, so you can use the left hand or right hand depending on your handedness. And so the whole blaster is now ambidextrous in a way that it wasn't before. And I think that that's really nice. As a left-handed person, it was really frustrating when I'd be testing or printing new parts and I'd have to flip it and I'd forget, and then I'd have a right-handed part. This doesn't have that issue at all. So there are two other features though, two big features that this has. The first is blowback. It has a sort of recoil action like the Zuru recoil blasters. So it gives it a really nice haptic feedback. That's become really important to me as I've been designing more and more blasters. I haven't made very many videos, but trust me, there's a lot. Having feedback on a flywheel blaster is a really underappreciated thing. There aren't very many blasters that even do that at all. And I think that's part of why solenoids have been becoming so popular, because they add haptic feedback. I know I mentioned this actually in my video about my ACR Strife, and I never did make a video about my printed ACR. Maybe someday. But that has a solenoid in it, so it fires, it has weight, it recoils, it bounces, it's nice. I also talked about that, or no, I was talking about my Strife had that a tiny bit with the auto pushers. That's why I like the auto pushers more than the rapid strike ones, because they return with the spring. So you get a click, you get sound to kind of match what's going on. Solenoids take that further because it actually fires and moves, and you will get a bounce in the whole blaster will bounce when that happens, and that's nice. This is taking that even further. We have a mechanical system for it instead. And that's just become really important for me, because having it feedback and kind of tell you that you're firing it on its own is really nice, instead of just having to look and see darts. It also kind of makes it just fun to play with. I have two other versions of the Blowback also. There's a geared pusher that just, and a lever one. Both do essentially the same thing. They just, on the trigger pull it back, and then they let it go as it, oh, that's why it was, they pull it back and let it go. This one though has the special feature that it actually, as it goes, when it hits, it will snap, and then your trigger will stay, and that gives it kind of like a certain timing that makes it feel a little better. And finally, the big feature, this is actually what prompted me to make this entire version, was I wanted the battery to be accessible without screws, and I ended up redesigning the entire blaster because this feature, it ended up going so deep into it. I extensively researched real firearms, real pistols, specifically the Mk8 the USP. Because I really just like the visuals of it. The size, it's actually not that different sized from a Pigeon. The Mk8, the USP is a lot smaller. I was looking at that, and I saw that they disassembled a certain way. And so now there's become two sort of main components of my designs now, which are haptic feedback and disassembly. Because I've really come to kind of dislike the clamshell disassembly. It's tedious, it's frustrating. You cannot repair something in the field if it clamshells, because you have to undo like 20 screws, and all of the components are sitting in it sideways. One of the advantages of the FTW cage is that it doesn't rely on the standard format that we've come to expect of like a Strife cage. So without any further ado, I will just field strip this. Okay, so it's got a few pins. There is usually one up here. I don't have one right now. I just use filament, 3D printing filament. So that just goes through here, holds it in place. And this is the battery tray. There's one back here as well, and then there's one for the mag release if you use the katana version. So basic disassembly, we pull off the battery tray, flip up the blowback slide, and then the slide comes off in the front like a real pistol. And we have the basic components here. Pull that pin out, and then pull out this one. This is the main pin. This holds the cage in, and the slide lock is attached to it. You screw that onto it. The firing group comes out, which is the flywheels and the trigger. I did actually have a different version of that, which I will talk about in a second. And the trigger group comes out the back here. I guess I'll take out this too, maybe. You don't strictly need any tools, although it's good to have something that can poke these filament pins out. So, and there's the mag release. So we have a very nice solid frame and slide assembly. These are printed in one part now. and that makes it so that they just, you know, they're very solid. The way the blowback works is we have this, which catches this on the slide. So the slide is attached to this thing here, like the slide safety. And this, pretty much this lever just pushes this back. The slide snaps forward, and then this is in the forward position. The arm comes back, and it catches that and returns. It resets. And that is all that it does. The trigger is the same as before, or the pusher is essentially the same as before. It's just a pusher and an arm. And on the recoil version, though, the pusher actually has a guide in the bottom instead of the side, so it can't wobble left and right, which has been a problem for me in the past. If you do not have a spring like this, these are very hard to come by, that can go around the barrel and under the slide and compress all the way so that it can actually catch. You can just put a rubber band here. There's a hook on the slide for a rubber band. I actually really like the rubber band system. It's nice and snappy. The same as before, the trigger is actually presses the switch down, and as soon as you move the trigger, unclicks, starts revving. The way that that's done is you wire using the normally closed tab instead of normally open. The whole cage, this is just a big chunk, and the pin goes through here like that, and that's what holds everything together. So there was actually a version of this that had a slot cut out and had a grip safety for revving. Some people really liked it, but for the most part, I don't think that it really made a difference to anybody. And I had actually a major failure. I burned out a pair of motors because this was the scenario that I'd predicted would happen, is that you draw it, you try and fire it, but you wouldn't have it revving because you hadn't squeezed it right. And if that was an actual safety, like an electronic safety, that wouldn't happen because it wouldn't rev without the trigger being pulled. Because they were independent, you could actually kind of fire without revving, and I did just that, and then I revved, and it jammed and burned out my motors. There was smoke and everything. So that was my first sign. I also was not compatible with this because the switch went back here. So the Talon version couldn't have it. I took away the wildcard version, which was going to be the grip rev, and ended up just kind of axing that feature. It's not really worth it, in my opinion. It's cool, but the control, I mean, if you can't pull the trigger like that much on your own, like in your head, I don't really feel like you're going to be able to squeeze the pistol. The only people who would really benefit from that are those who have actual legitimate shooting experience with real pistols that have a grip safety. If you don't have that, I don't think that it's worth having at all, to be honest. I guess we'll throw this back together, huh? So the whole thing can just assemble very, very quickly. I mean, I think I can get this thing put together in 30 seconds. Although I usually leave the mag release out. And it's back together. And we can just throw this on there too. The way to actually do the battery, you can access the battery here. So if you had a major problem, you could throw back the slide lock, pull this off, and then pull the battery out. You can even get the battery in here, like this. It's not easy though. My personal preference is to take off the whole slide and the barrel, which is just friction fit. So I did mention that this was smaller than the old one, but it can somewhat more easily fit a 1500 nanotech in here. It's not easy. It's still, I'd say this is still a battery that's a little too big for it, but it is like doable. So squeeze that in there. All of the wires have to be tucked down. They cannot be above the slide like the frame, or the slide will not work. And with the blowback, that's kind of critical. Anyway, so same as before, we just pull the trigger a little bit and it will engage. Oh, also, this is worth noting, the blowback lever has to be down for the slide to go back. So even if you play with it off, you're going to have to pull it down to access the slide. I personally don't see any reason to turn off the blowback. So this is all put together, ready to go. Again, I like these mags the best. You're not really going to be able to see anything here, but I'll have a firing demo on this as well. So I do feel like this is, for me, it was really important that there was a better pistol. I like this. This is my favorite Hasbro blaster. Nothing has topped the Hammershot or Sweet Revenge for me. They're comfortable, they're easy to use, they're fun, they're pretty compact, they work well. They just don't work that well. They're not very strong, they're not very powerful. For the low capacity of 8 tops, and the weak power 100 FPS tops, I've never gotten one anywhere near that. Mine are like 70. I just don't feel like it's very useful. It's great. I keep this one in my Nerf gear always, actually, because I never know when I'm going to need something really reliable to fall back on. That's what that's for. That's all that it's for. I don't use it otherwise. I haven't had problems with this other than that event that I mentioned where I had the grip rev fail me. It works. It works well. It fires pretty hard, it fires pretty accurately, it fires fast, as fast as I can pull the trigger, which means that I have rate of fire. It's a great complement to things like the Caliburn, which has a low rate of fire and good accuracy and range, generally speaking. Same with any Springer. This is a good Springer loadout pistol. I would run this on that. I wouldn't really run it with my MHP because they're going to share an ammo pool. They're going to share the mags. You know, even though I've got like 30 or more katana mags, I don't have that much room in my stuff and my gear to hold that many. I can hold like 10 or 12 tops in my normal loadout. So having something that uses that same ammo that is a flywheel blaster is not so good, like the MHP, because I'll run through my ammo faster than, you know, I can replenish it, obviously. And, you know, there's no replenishing in the field. I'll run out of ammo really fast, and then I'll switch blasters. I'm using the same ammo. So if I'm running something that uses as much ammo as this, then I'm going to probably leave this behind. I don't really need a sidearm if I'm using the same ammo. Or what I might do is get a different sidearm, like my Hammershot, or some others that I've got in the works. The Turkey, the Magpie. So, you know, the other thing, it works great with the Spring Thunder. That one loses range and rate of fire, but it has, you know, spread. This doesn't offer range as a benefit, like a cross benefit in its loadout, but it offers rate of fire. So if you're under fire, you can draw this, you can unload quickly on the target, and, you know, that's good. You know, that's great, actually. That was actually what inspired the first one, was I wanted something that would work with my Spring Thunder, because I found that there were more times than I wanted to admit where I needed more fire. Not more fire power, not more range, but just more fire. You know, if there's 2 targets or 3 targets, you might just need to give them some cover fire. This, draw quick, fire, you know, your mag. They'll keep their heads down, you might be able to get away. Or you might get some backup, or you might tag them. You know, there's that. I feel like we've seen, on a kind of a different note, the Pigeon, I feel like kind of the original Pigeon showed there was possibility for a new market of blaster. The tactical sidearm, the actual sidearm blasters. Not secondaries, not a strife that you've got on like leg magnets or something, but an actual sidearm that's holstered or set aside and not used often. There's, the Pigeon, obviously. There's the Falcon that I mentioned, and the Komodo. That one's unreleased so far. It's like a brushless Pigeon. It's smaller than the Pigeon by a lot. It's narrower and shorter. But I don't know when that's going to be released or if it's going to really be for sale or not. Because that was a personal project by Attachments, and it's really cool. But not necessarily super accessible. The Falcon is actually fully open source. The step files are open source, at least for the older version of the Falcon, which is really, really cool. I admire that. I am not quite willing to do that myself just yet. There's the Worker Hurricane, which has a rotary 6-round mag. That's not terribly useful, but then it gets power. It's the Hurricane wheels get a lot of power. They get 130, 150. So, that's more power than this, but less capacity. People have been making that mag fed, and in some ways I feel like that defeats the point, but, people are always going to do things like that. It's not always about the point. Sometimes it's about doing it. And there's, other options too. I made the Turkey, which is sort of like a Mauser. I'm working on the Turkey 2. And there's my favorite of all of them. There's the Viper, which is an 8-round break action revolver by Donut Steel Tendies. And that one is great. That's a great sidearm for, any situation pretty much. That's the kind of blaster that I would run with my MHP. This is the kind of blaster I'd run with my Caliburn or something similar. Because I want, not because it has more capacity in this mag only holds 8, so it's the same capacity, but I can change mags really fast with this. In seconds I can have 15 rounds, especially if I drop the mags. If you have to place the mags in your actual loadout, that's not as good, but there's a lot of options here. I'm actually really happy that we're seeing a lot of pistol options. Oh, and there's some others. There's, the Mauser fire. Yeah, I'm a little less, when they're not accessible, like some things. Chrono mags are pretty popular. They're not strictly holsterable, though, and they're usually designed for power strictly. The Mauser fire is Chris Cartea's. I always say Cartea, but maybe it's Cartea. Those are his brainchild, and went on to help Jet actually design the Katana mag and stuff. Another reason I'm fond of them. We're friends. We talk. The Mauser fire is really cool, but it's very specialized, and not everyone can make that. The Spamf kit by Gavin Fuzzy is another option. That one takes the Falcon fire, makes it into sort of a low power Mauser fire, and we have, something similar. It's not quite as powerful, but it's a lot easier to make, and, less precision, I think. I mean, I don't have one. But I know that Chris's work is very high precision, very high power. So what I feel like there's a lot of options in this suddenly emerging field of blasters, because for so long, I was doing this too. It was all primaries all the time. And I still sort of subscribe to the opinion that your primary should do everything that you need it to. You shouldn't have to have a sidearm. But sometimes, you don't have a primary that does that. If you're running a Spring Thunder, it can't do everything. You can only fire that thing so fast. Same with a Caliburn, for that matter. You can only fire them so fast. And that's what this is for. I actually think, Springers are probably still the superior technology in Nerf. Although I'm not personally a Springer person. HPA 2. This is still, even for someone with 300 FPS primary, they might still find a reason to use this. I mean, the fact that it's low velocity might be the very reason that they'd use it. They might be in a situation where they're reloading. I mean, that's why everyone carried a hammer shot. But the hammer shot is just a little lacking. So, you know, I say let's have more. I think it's really cool. This is for me, this is one of my favorite designs. I think that it's the kind of thing that we need to see more of in the hobby. From a competitive point of view, I mean, you might not feel that this is the right thing for the hobby. I can understand if you think this looks too realistic. And in some ways it is kind of realistic. But I think I've said it before, but for me, what I kind of want is to play Airsoft Light. And, you know, so I want to play intense, sort of tactical games with, you know, veteran players who know what they're doing, that are, you know, a little more like Airsoft than tag. And for me, being, you know, wanting to play that kind of game, this is really good. This is really useful. It's legitimately something I almost always use now. Almost always have the Pigeon on my person while I'm playing. And I actually, you know, I meant to talk about this earlier. It's a good HVZ blaster. I ran pretty much exclusively the Pigeon at West vs. Zombies, and I actually regretted running my bullpup primary on the last day instead. Okay, I ran it for the first mission or two, and it worked great because it lays down so much fire with the 2-round burst, which will be its own video. But when I went to the last stand, I didn't have the time to load up my mags properly. Also didn't have the ammo, so I just ran my katana mags in it, and I should have just ran this, because when I pulled, this was exactly what I was talking about earlier with the ammo pool. I was running the same ammo, and so by the time I had a critical failure with my bullpup, because it's still kind of experimental. I mean, it's very experimental still. I had a problem with it. The gears and the trigger misaligned, and I couldn't use it anymore. I put it down, and I pulled out this. I did way better. I got way more tags. Unfortunately for the zombies, a lot of those tags were headshots. And just like headshot, 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 headshot. And it was great. It worked great. It was super, you know, it's compact, so I have less out to be tagged. I've got, you know, I have some footage from that. I don't know if I'll do anything with it. I haven't even reviewed it, and it's been like 2 months. So, you know, but it works great for HVZ if it's allowed, because it's small. Because, you know, I can run a 15-round mag, and I can have this tiny package, and, you know, it actually really shines in HVZ because you don't need the velocity, you don't need the range. In, you know, PvP, range can really help, and this doesn't have it. It only hits 120 FPS tops, so we don't have range. And, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, but I kind of also don't care that much, because it does what I want it to. I personally don't plan on running this most of the time. I plan on having it most of the time. So, you know, for HVZ, where you're going to run it all the time, it might be great because, you know, oh, look, fire. Oh, look, zombie, 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 zombie. And one tag might be enough. Or you don't have to arc your shots because they're right in your face. And then if they're right in your face, you know, you can choke up on it and pull it right into your body, and you've got like, what, you know, a 10-inch target instead of, you know, a 24-inch target. And, you know, works really well for that. Like I said, I'll have a firing demo, and yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. So I also have included some gameplay here of the Pigeon run with a riot shield. I don't feel like it actually showcases all that well what the Pigeon is good for, but it is, you know, a use of it. I had some major issues that day. It's kind of off my game anyway, but also I shoot left-handed, and using a right-handed blaster instead with the shield, which was left-hand only, really threw me. We had some problems that day too with people not taking hits, especially with low velocity blasters like the Pigeon. They just couldn't even feel it. So I did get some tags. It was kind of fun to run at first. I think with a little better coordination and teamwork, I probably could have done even better with it. On looking back at it, I didn't do as bad as I thought I did. So, you know, it's not all bad. It just doesn't show what Pigeon's really good for.
That's a very nice shield you have there.
It's Tim's.
It's Tim's?
Yep, it's Tim's. And then I got
shot from over there, but I have no idea who it was.
Well, headshots don't count anyway.
That's why I'm still here.
Blake, I got you.
Out of ammo, it's me.
You're gonna take from me. Hit.